Hello, welcome to Slow Cheese UK and welcome to Slow Food Scotland. My name is Walter Mowat. I'm the Director for Scotland on the Slow Food UK board. I'm currently at the maturing rooms for Rory Mellis, Cheesemonger. The Mellis business has been very successful. They have won the Slow Food Awards for Best Cheesemonger in Scotland ever since the award started. So we're going to go inside now, have a chat with Rory Mellis, who's the son of Ian Mellis, the founder, and we're going to find out what it is that makes the business so successful. Hi there, Rory. To start things off, do you think you could just introduce yourself, your role in the business, and then maybe go on and give us a little bit of potted history of how Mellis came about and where it is today?
Yeah, sure thing. Hi, my name's Rory. I am one of three directors at Mellis Cheese, based here in Edinburgh. It's myself, my mum, and my dad, directors, and I deal with the overall running of the business on a day-to-day basis. I deal with area managers, wholesale, online, and just the general retail stores as well. We are primarily cheese importers, retailers, and wholesalers. So we buy from all over the UK, we buy from Europe. We bring it into our maturing rooms here based in Edinburgh. We mature it until we're ready to release it, and then we send it to our stores, restaurants, and online as well. The business was started by my dad in the early 90s, purely based off of just a passion for cheese. He used to make block cheddar and up in Orkney, Inverness, and then lastly down in Chester in England for now about 15 years now. And then after the whole 15 years of cheese making and hard graft, he decided to open up a retail store, and our first one would be up in Victoria Street in the Grass Market.
I remember it well.
Yeah. So yeah,
obviously it's before your time.
Yeah, so that was 4 years before I was born. I was born when Dad opened up the third shop, which was Bruntsfield, just up from which is now Morningside.
Mm-hmm.
So Dad opened Victoria Street, moved over to Glasgow, and that's where we started maturing cheese, down in the basement of Glasgow. Moved over to Bruntsfield, and then we opened St Andrews. Moved Bruntsfield over to Morningside, and then we finally opened up in Aberdeen as well.
Wow.
So yeah, we closed Aberdeen a while ago, so we now only have the 5 stores, and then obviously our maturing rooms here in Edinburgh, in the heart of Leith.
And so when did the maturing rooms here come about?
So maturing rooms were the year 2000, so just after Dad opened 93, 95, 97, after he opened the third store, we decided to take on, or Dad decided to take on this unit here in Albion, which actually we're in the old bar factory where they used to produce the lemonade now brew. So a lot of Scottish history here. So we opened this in 2000, and Dad decided to not only retail and wholesale the cheese, but take on more cheese and begin to mature it. He had a background in cheese science, the maturing aspect of cheese itself, and just kind of the background knowledge on how to take the cheese a little bit further. So we thought, if we open up a maturing room, so it gives us the ability to then age a little bit more, stock some more cheese, and just differentiate us from perhaps other retailers now. So that's a big part of our business, and it's kind of what makes us slightly different.
It's interesting that your father has such a deep knowledge of not just cheese, but the manufacture or making of cheese. So manufacture sounds like very commercial, and this is artisan.
Yeah.
It's interesting to know that there is that deep knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny.
Process.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, because I mean, just way at the beginning is Dad actually started off making block cheddar, which traditionally is block cheddar is used for commercial size. It's for supermarkets and for supermarkets to make good profit on. And he lastly only moved into the farmhouse market when he was down in Chester and discovered Chester cheese, and with trips over to France with mum, and kind of discovered that passion for farmhouse. So he's always been interested in cheese, but his experience was in block cheddar. Doesn't mean, I think block cheddar maybe has some bad connotations, but he truly understood how far you needed to take the milk, when to split it, when to cut the curd, and he was running maybe 7 or 8 vats at one time, so on a much larger scale, but he seemed to, he just had the knowledge.
Yeah.
And it gave him obviously the opportunity to go around different cheesemakers at the same time. So we kind of lastly moved into that in the early, or Dad moved into that in the early 90s, and it's kind of grown from there. So we don't stock any commercial cheeses here. It's just all farmhouse, usually single herd, and from small scale producers. So big switch.
All the kind of cheeses that Slow Food loves.
Yeah, exactly. Mum came into the business after Dad opened his second shop in Glasgow. She was nursing down in Chester at the time, so she used to come up on the weekends and be Dad's Saturday girl at Victoria Street. And then, when we opened up Glasgow, I think it was, Mum's moved into the business to work alongside, so they were a partnership for now 20 years. Just turned over to Limited, but they've been working together for over 28 years now in the industry, which is nice.
Okay, and I dare I raise the pandemic word, but how has the pandemic been for Mellis Cheese? I have seen queues outside the Morningside shop, for example, at some of the maybe the more difficult times of the pandemic. I might suggest that it's not been particularly bad for you, but
I think like all businesses, it was initially quite scary at the start. So it's not been terribly bad for us. However, it's it has come with consequences. We've had to adapt what we do. We had to adapt what we did very quickly. We lost all of our wholesale clients, so unfortunately for the bars and restaurants, they all had to shut. And the bars and restaurants and the pubs and everyone, the small scale independents that we supply, unfortunately closed, which is quite a large proportion of our business. So we had to quickly adapt, move our drivers to online side of things, so offering free home delivery. Unfortunately, the first store, Victoria Street, became a little bit of a ghost town just purely with the lack of tourists coming into the Edinburgh city centre, and a lot of students moved away from St Andrews, so we lost that trade, so to speak. It feels weird talking about it now because it's been 18, 19 months since it started, so it seems like a distant memory, but I feel it was good for us as a company to really just focus on what we were doing at that time, put a bit more focus into our retail stores, and just develop our processes a little bit. We've had to adapt with maybe just constant processes and different rules coming into light on a weekly basis, but apart from the sleepless nights, it's been really good.
Is it appropriate now maybe to take a trip down to the touring rooms and try to see some of this in action, see exactly what you do, what you get up to, and what makes you successful?
Of course, we'll pop up in some whites and we'll pop down to the touring rooms.
Located on the port side of Texas. Finally, on behalf of Caledonia McBrae, the captain and the crew, we would like to thank you for travelling with us today and wish you a safe over journey to your destination. Thank you.
Most folk would think you'd be mad to start making cheese in the Isle of Mull, maybe you'd have to be. The land is somewhat isolated, the ground wet, but through ingenuity and hard work, Mull has been crafted into one of the great British cheddars, replicating its environment in fruity and powerful tangy flavours. What stands out about the Isle of Mull in relation to other cheddars is its colour. Where most cheddars are rich in yellows, Mull is more ivory in colour. Herein lies the instant attraction. Its ivory veneer gives off a sense of what the palate may expect. The Reed family, Jeff, Chris and their 3 sons, moved to the island in the late 1970s. Coming from the home of cheddar, they moved their farm from Somerset to an island off the Scotland's west coast. They took with them what they could over a few trips up the motorway, but the majority of what you'll find has been built by hand by Brendan and his family. Self-sufficient is probably an understatement for Brendan. Wind turbines, stoves, swimming pools, maturing rooms, cheese press are just a few key pieces of equipment that Brendan has crafted himself to ensure smooth running of the whole enterprise. Brendan's brother Garth starts milking his 130 strong herd of mostly Friesians at 4:30 in the morning and usually finishes at 6:30 just in time for head cheesemaker Neil to get started on production. Mixing the milk from the previous evening, the process is a combination of heavy lifting and careful measuring. Temperatures, pH levels and time need all to be precise and closely monitored. Knocking out 30 kilogram truckles from the moulds while the milk is brought to 32 degrees, piercing the Hebridean blue between renneting, then cheddaring the curds and filling the forms. After those have been set and everything is cleaned down, there's a couple of hundred maturing cheddars that need turned. Cheese making can be a little bit like spinning plates, but we all can appreciate the hard work and dedication that the cheesemakers put into their products.
Stuff we'll pop through. So yeah, this is the new part of the warehouse. We've brought in a new packaging machine ready to improve all of our packaging and cutting line. Gives a little bit more consistent cuts and allows for the cheese to breathe really nice. We divide our warehouse into 6 fridges. So we have fridge 1, which is the big fridge, dispatch fridge at the end. That allows us to keep the cheese really cool and ready for dispatch to wholesale the next day, wholesale clients, trade customers, our own shops. Fridge 2 we keep for soft cheese maturation, so a little bit of a lower temperature and higher humidity. It allows the soft goat cheese to develop quite nicely. Fridge 3, which we keep primarily just for dairy products such as buffalo mozzarella, butter, goat's curd, burrata, all of these soft cheeses, so a lot lower temperature. Fridge 4 at the moment is more of a kind of, we called it in and out, so some products that are coming in quite quickly and then going out the next day. And then fridge 5 is where we keep the majority of our cheese that's maturing, and then we try and develop a little bit further. So we'll take a pop in fridge 5 and see what that's like. So the guys have shut down, it's about 4:30, so the guys are shut down for the day. Usually the day starts at about 6 o'clock in the morning for us. Yeah, cheese does not sleep. So this is sitting roughly about 10-11 degrees roughly, and between kind of 90 and 95% humidity, so quite low. humidifier here, which we pop on throughout the day. This basically will pump out fresh. Well, it's basically condensation from the water pipe that goes in here and pumps out humidity into the room.
Right.
So it allows for cheese to develop a little bit quicker, and it also keeps it from drying out and getting the cracks in the cheeses that you normally would. Because if you put a cheese into a fridge exposed, it's going to crack. So here allow the moisture to build up in the room, and then that stops all the cracks from being formed. Most of it's split into countries, so you have a lot of the French and the Spanish here. Basically, it tells you which batch is in on which line. It'll tell you if we brush and turn this fridge pretty much every week. So effectively, when the guys have completed their task for the day, we'll say brushed and turned, and then when we do our weekly walk around every Friday, we will tick whether we sampled it or not, and that's just so that we know we're tasting all the cheese all the time. You move over to here, so this is more of our English, the likes of Galway's Caerphilly, Ogleshield, and then some of our Scottish blues down the bottom. And then we kind of move over to the Scottish side, which is the exciting part for me. So these are two cheeses that we keep on effectively. We've got Westry White, which is based up in the Orkney Isles, and then you have Bonnet, which is based down in Ayrshire, in Stewarton. These are two cheeses that we take on further. So one of the big parts that we like to do is develop a cheese. So we continue that process on from the cheesemakers. We buy it in young, and then our job is to basically develop it and take it to the next level. So we do have cheeses that we prefer young, but for the likes of Bonnet, where we want maybe an extra 2-3 months on it, and then for the likes of Westry Wife, we put another 5 months on it. It's our job to create it. So you'll basically have the batches of Bonnet that we have, and the release date, which needs a positive to release. So once we take the cheese past a certain date, it's our liability to then test if it's good to sell. So the release date will be here. So the first batch that's been released today, and then we've got another 2 weeks, roughly another 2 weeks, and then roughly another week for the next batch. Every batch that we release, we have to test. And then you have Westry Wife, which are all sitting down here. So what you can see, a good example is this is batch 35. So this is a kind of 8 to 9 week aged Bonnet goat's milk cheese made in Stewarton. Batch 35 means it's our 35th batch. We bought this year. This is kind of a very fresh, picked up on Friday, 9-week-old Bonnet, wrapped in muslin cloth, which we leave here, and we kind of work from top to bottom, and then left to right. So what you'll find up here is batch 27, which is kind of roughly 8 batches smaller. Or you have 25, but I'm not as tall as Mikey, so I can't reach up there. So you've got batch 27, which has developed a little bit of a mould on it, and it develops the flavour, but it also shrinks in size. So what you can kind of see is the big difference between even batch 35 and batch 27. We feel that keeping it for an additional 3 months gives a little bit more flavour. The cheese becomes a bit more dense and a lot creamier. Whereas sometimes with the fresher stuff, the flavour's maybe not quite there. Usually this comes vacuum packed, so what we do is we take every cheese out of the vacuum pack, out of the box, and we allow it to be exposed to the air, because develop a little bacteria which gives it flavour.
So are you taking a slightly different view of the cheese from the actual cheese maker?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it perhaps for small-scale Scotch cheesemakers, it can be difficult to mature the cheese for so long, because the only way I can sometimes explain it is if you go into a pub and you're to pay for a pint, and say to that bartender, I'll pay for that pint in 12 months. Their cash flow will be ruined. They expect the cash there, and then they give you the pint. Whereas it's the same with cheese. They have to hold a limited amount of stock. So if you have 12 months aged Isle of Mull, for example, you have to hold 12 months of stock before you even start, which is a lot of money. So I think one of the main reasons we mature is because we want to show that the cheese doesn't taste the best at this age, it tastes the best at this age. So that's our main reason. The second reason is just maybe to help out small-scale cheesemakers. If we can take the cheese earlier from them, they get their money in quicker. We'll do part of the maturing work, which we just build into our labour costs. But it's one thing we're really passionate about. We don't want to kind of stop. Again, with the likes of the Westry Wife. So again, you've got batch 2 up here, which is our second batch we bought this year, and then we've got batch 8 down the bottom. Now, Westry Wife is a really special cheese made up in the Isle of Orkney. Normal dairy production, Jason and Nina have heard of, well, Ayrshire cows. Normal dairy production for a small scale cheesemaker is 120 upwards herd of cows. Jason and Nina have 5. So unfortunately we don't have a huge scale. This is what we have had they make from April right through to October, which we're coming up to now. We roughly get between 35 and 40 rounds a month, which sounds a lot, but in actual fact it's not that much. So what we like to do, if we have 40 rounds, we split 20 rounds to sell to our shops and wholesale customers, and then we keep 20 rounds for maturing.
Right.
So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14, 28, 30, 42, and then you've roughly probably got about 72 rounds of cheese on here. But again, what you'll be able to do is that we take this on for 5 months and we'll brush and turn it. So what I mean by brush and turn it is just take the cheese here, and we have a brush down there. So we'll brush off kind of any of the debris, any kind of loose like rind or any kind of dust that's forming or any mold that's kind of forming on the cheese. The idea for the main part of being a good cheese maturer is just keep it clean.
Yeah,
that's exactly what we do with the cheese. We're just keeping it clean, keeping it tidy, dust free, and effectively so we'll brush and turn that. When it first comes in, we'll do it twice a week because it's quite wet and sticky, and then maybe after a month or 2, then we go just down to once a week. So we'll brush it, turn it, and then put it back. And we'll do the same across all the lines. So these are due to be released in end of September.
Right. And will they be marketed, if you like, as sort of extra mature or something like that?
Like mature Westry Wife or aged Westry Wife is what we're going to go for. We'll put our label on it because we've done the labour of maturing it, and then we sell it to our stores and we sell it to staff, to kind of other shops. A lot of people really love this because Jason makes this almost like an Alpine style cheese, so quite similar to Comté. The make is very similar, the curd size is very similar. So effectively it starts off quite similar to maybe a raclette style, quite a soft, poignant, wash rind texture, and by the time it reaches 5 months in here, it turns into more of a crystallized Comté style cheese. So a lot deeper flavour, a little bit more salty, and just like a really nice strong taste. So we'll do this once a week for 5 months, and then when it's ready to sell, we'll put it to the shops. But yeah, that's kind of our first cheese fridge. Throughout the day, we obviously will just wet the floor, and then occasionally, maybe once every few hours, you'll get the steam coming up, which we can turn up or down effectively, just depending on how much moisture we want. So we'll keep this on for maybe 3 or 4 hours of the day, just build up the moisture in here, and that allows for the flavour to kind of keep building.
Excellent.
So yeah, that's the first fridge. This is kind of the cutting room. You'd think it, but we do a lot of cutting and picking from here 6 days a week. We've got 2 teams that usually work in online, and then we've got our trade team as well. Then moving to the soft cheese maturation fridge. A little bit cooler here, you can kind of instantly feel it. Tiny bit of a kind of like higher humidity, but still quite a dryness to it. We've got batches of goat's cheese just basically sitting here, and we always work with, normally with goat's cheese, what you'll find, with the fresh batches come in, what you'll find with goat's cheeses is that they will bloom very quickly. So what you can find, Golden Cross is always a great example of this. The red sticker basically just means it's on hold. So when we don't feel that the cheese is ripe and ready, we don't put it out.
Right. Okay.
So what I mean by that is that you kind of see how the mould is starting to develop on the outside. Almost you could just touch it. It's quite fluffy and soft. So effectively, when it's under ripe, they dust it in charcoal. The high humidity allows for the kind of rind to develop and the bloominess to, basically for the bacteria to grow. The bacteria is what gives it the flavour and ripens the cheese, so it breaks down the inner part of it and it gives it the flavour and the consistency it should be. This one's probably about a couple of days off being ready. You'll find if it's not ready, it's going to be dusted in ash or charcoal. It's going to be quite chalky. So this is basically the result of 4 days in here. So we need to keep it for another 2 days. So keep this for a week, and then it'll be ready to sell.
Right.
But fresh cheese is usually really quick, within like in a week, and it'll be done. So what we do is we always work a batch in arrear. So you'll find multiple batches. You've got 55, 56, and 57 just come in, down to 54. So effectively, what we're trying to do is, by keeping a batch in arrear, it means that every cheese that we're picking ready for the shops and trade customers, that they're ready to go. That we're not picking a batch that's under mature or under ripe, we're picking the ones that are ready to go.
So it's quite a potentially quite a complex scheduling job. I mean, or at least working out what the schedule is. I mean, maybe once it's there, it's easy just to feed it.
I mean, a lot of maturing and a lot of maturation is keeping clean.
Yes.
So you've got to be good at maths. That's all you need to do. If you know you sell a couple of hundred in a week. Yes. Then bring in 400. See past that, you've got 2 weeks in stock, and then just keep ordering 200 every week. Yes. What we have to be careful for and keep the cheesemakers updated on is obviously if the more trade customers and the more retail customers that buy the cheese, if it gains in popularity, we always have to review it. So we always want to keep at least 2 weeks worth in stock. So every month we say, okay, well, we sold this much, we'll need to increase our orders to X amount we'll have to increase our orders to X amount to keep us on top of what we're doing. So again, it's just about keeping clean, keeping on top of the orders, and you've got to be good at maths. So you'll find exactly the kind of same throughout all of our cheeses here. Is that you'll have batch 23 that's ready to go. Batch 24 still won't be until the 20th of the 9th. And then you've got batch 26, which will be ready on the 4th of October, and then batch 25, we've run off a little bit, but imagine it's 2 weeks after that, because we've got 20th of the 10th. So what we're trying to do is just, it's very easy to bring in cheese and sell it, but if you're not doing the cheese justice, then we're not doing ourselves justice. You need to be able to understand when you're taking the cheese to the right point. And that doesn't necessarily mean keeping it for 6 or 7 months. If the cheese only needs 2 months, then the cheese only needs 2 months. Really.
I mean, you're displaying all the qualities that a good cheese maker would have, because you're part of that process, aren't you?
I think, I mean, we like to think so. I think we're not, we're not in there at 5 doing the milking and doing the making, but if we can give a little bit of care and attention to the cheese here, then we know that we're giving, the retail customers and wholesale customers the best cheese there is available. And then one, maybe not as exciting as the other 4 fridges. We've got charcuterie in this fridge as well. But this is our dispatch fridge where the bigger wheels are kept. It can be kept at a lot lower temperature, and if there's any orders that are going out the next day, they're usually kept here. Malt cooler. Mikey's obviously moved this into here. But what you'll find is kind of bigger wheel cheeses here. So the likes of Pitchfork Cheddar, Isle of Mull, big wheels of Gruyere. Again, not incredibly exciting fridge, it's quite low temperature. Again, you'll see that's our orders going out to the shop for tomorrow morning. So nice and kind of, this is more industry fridge, I think. But it is kind of true and kind of just see there roughly is that it's not a huge order of Gruyere. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10 wheels of Gruyere.
Yeah.
It takes up a lot of space.
Yeah.
So I mean that's one of the things that we found is that it's another thing to think about when cheesemakers are trying to mature is that the space value of your business. You're basically just paying extra money for storage, which is still an added cost onto farmhouse cheesemakers. So I mean we're all the way through. We'll be using this at Christmas more of our sort of like packing line, so to speak, and then we kind of our wine cellar and everything's there. And then we moved into the sort of dry store. So, as well as cheese, we also work with a lot of like small scale Scottish. We have chutney makers, pickle makers, biscuit makers. So we try and do a bit for basically all the industry, which you'll kind of find in this array here.
Okay, so anything which is complementary to the cheese.
Yeah.
Very good. Excellent. Fascinating. Right, that was a fascinating tour downstairs, quite mind-blowing, especially for an amateur cheese eater like myself to see as much as that. I mean, you see that sort of thing in television programs about cheese makers, but not necessarily about cheesemongers. So that it's a very interesting slant on the way that you kind of evolve the cheese for other people to their advantage and to your advantage. So yeah, absolutely fascinating. There's a lot of cheese there. Do you know roughly how much there is?
I guess it kind of depends on the time of year. I think roughly now in the warehouse it's between 20 and 25 tons. Obviously we have the stores as well, which sit on a little bit, and then obviously towards Christmas it increases dramatically. It's part of our, we select a number of cheeses that we want to mature. So a lot of soft cheeses, pretty much all the soft cheeses, a lot of small scale Scottish cheeses as well. And then we don't tend to mature stuff like the Comté, for example, which is 24 months. So there's some cheeses that we don't mature, but the majority we do. Obviously, the cheeses that we have to mature, it means that we have to sit on a little bit more stock. So that's usually where the kind of increase in stock comes from. And yeah, that's effectively one of the reasons why we need a lot of space here, I suppose.
Yes. I remember talking to Selena Cairns of Errington's about, we're going to drift here into the dreaded raw milk cheese and is it dangerous or not territory. But I remember that when she had the Coralline impounded, it wasn't allowed to be sold for, I think it was 3 years, or it was quite old as far as Coralline went. And, by gosh, it improved it, didn't it?
Yeah,
it really did. I seem to remember that, I don't know whether it was yourselves or whether it was one of the other cheesemongers were suggesting that maybe that's what they wanted to do from then on. They wanted to always have 3-year Coralline, and Selena just couldn't financially bear that because of having to store it for that length of time.
I think that's part of, that's a lot of small-scale cheesemakers' problems, unfortunately, and having it impounded and not able to touch it for a couple of years does, have some sort of benefit. And it was gorgeous. It was almost kind of Parmesan style.
It really was, yes, I bought a lot of that. One of the positive sides, things that came out of that terrible court case, and of course the fact that somebody did die as a result of eating contaminated cheese. Whether or not it was, I don't think they ever found out exactly what the problem was, but they eliminated the cheese manufacturing process, if you
Yeah.
like. And it was quite interesting at the time to understand a little bit of the science about that, and that the maturation process actually heals, if you like, heals the cheese and removes the bad bacteria.
Of course.
Which I found fascinating. I just didn't understand that at all.
Yeah.
It was, interesting. Have you got ideas as to where Mellis is going in the future? Are you going to get bigger? Are you going to have more shops? Are you going to sell more things other than cheese, or what?
Yeah. Well, I suppose, I mean, the future's wide open for us. We're still, I'm kind of 3.5 years into my lifetime here. So yeah, I mean, we're always thinking ahead. We're doing quite a bit of wholesale now down in northern England, kind of mainly Manchester and Leeds type way. So obviously the plans for the future is to keep progressing Scottish cheeses down there and educating the north and
So
Midlands.
that is largely Scottish cheeses that are going down to England?
Yeah, majority. I mean, we're trying as much as we can to push Scottish cheeses over the borders and down to the sort of northern England, even as far as the Midlands, and just maybe educate them on cheeses that are available up here in Scotland, because there's a lot of really nice ones. So our plan is definitely to grow down there and to become more of a presence in a brand down in England. We would like to continue our exporting. We do a lot of export to Madrid. I used to live there, and quite friendly with a company over in Madrid who are taking Scottish cheeses actually. So yeah, it's reaching as far as Madrid. So we'll continue to develop that. Next on the cards, perhaps we have a bar in Morningside. So we'd like to see where that goes in terms of maybe opening up another one, and delving into the hospitality side of the world, and just kind of I suppose growing as every company wants to grow. I think I would love to be able to hold more cheeses and mature more cheeses and deal with a little bit more with the maturation side, and I think,
are there enough cheese makers around of the quality that you want to sell?
Yeah, no, I think there's certainly enough. I mean, we don't buy from every small scale cheese maker in Britain. We try to, and we have best part of 110 to 115 cheeses on our cheese bench at one time. So there's only so many you can put on there before another one suffers.
Yes.
However, we deal largely with a large amount of English and Scottish and Irish cheesemakers, but not them all. So yeah, I mean, dealing maybe with more British cheesemakers in the years to come, and there's definitely more than enough, new cheesemakers coming up through the grass.
Of the quality that you want to sell.
Yeah, no, I think there's certainly enough. I mean, we don't buy from every small scale cheesemaker in Britain. We try to, and we have best part of 110 to 115 cheeses on our cheese bench. We've had a fairly easy ride importing. I feel there's not been that many problems importing through the border. Like you've seen downstairs, the majority of our stock is taken in prior to even selling. So we do have that buffer. We do have that. If the lorry is delayed in transit, we do have that buffer to be able to cope with it, and we also have enough cheese to be able to recommend other ones. It's one of the kind of beauties of being a cheesemonger and being able to offer customers tastes. The administrative aspect from the exporting side is a headache. It's a lot more difficult to get the cheese out of Britain, funny enough, than it is to get it in, which you would think the other way around. But it's just become a lot more paperwork, and obviously for the cheesemakers over in mainland Europe and exporters, I can imagine it has been a little bit of a nightmare. A lot of additional documents and extra hidden costs and stuff like that, which obviously affects everything that happens here.
Will that inhibit your choice of cheese to some extent in terms of the continental cheeses?
Yes and no. We love working with British cheesemakers. We love working with Scottish cheesemakers, and we will always try our best to sell, over maybe some of the continentals. However, I don't see us changing from, it's very difficult to get a Comté style cheese here in Britain. It's very difficult to get Parmesan or Gorgonzola. These are the cheeses that, for a cheesemonger, that I feel that you need to have. So perhaps we might start looking at similar alternative soft cheeses that are made here in Britain, but we still always got to support the mainland Europe. We've got before or still during whilst Dad has his shops open in the early 90s and even into the early 2000s. He was very pally and very friendly with all of the French cheesemakers. It was one of our regular family holidays. So yeah, to favour mainland Britain maybe over some of our friends and overseas is not something we're kind of keen to drop very quickly. But yeah, like I said, we deal a lot with small scale cheesemakers on mainland Europe. Our manchego's made from a single herd manchego made just outside Madrid. We know the cheesemaker, we know his name, we know how he works. So we just kind of adapt that process, the same philosophy and values we have for British cheesemakers. We have exactly the same in Europe.
It sounds to me like you need to get to slow cheese when it's safe to do that.
Yeah,
I know slow cheese is on this weekend, and it's very much a live event in Bra. But really, for UK people to get there, given all the restrictions just now and everything, it doesn't really work.
It doesn't. It's not worth the risk. I think a lot of it depends who's going. I've not heard a great deal. I've never been myself. I was meant to be judging in Spain this year, but it's just with, like you said, with the risks and the restrictions and the ongoing changes in rules, and especially so close to such a busy period for us, for our whole team here, is that you can only, we might just have to take it on the chin for another year, and then travel when it's safe to do so.
Yeah, well, Terra Madre is next year, and then there will be slow cheese the year after. So maybe that's something for the diary.
Yeah, exactly.
You seem very bullish about Scottish cheeses and about marketing them and selling them. Do you see the Scottish cheese makers in general becoming more popular outside Scotland? I mean, you're obviously being successful doing it, otherwise you would stop doing it.
I think so. I think bullshit. I mean, for me, it's a snowball effect, isn't it? It's, you get into north of England, and then a lot of people start, where did you get that cheese? Because a lot of cheese at the moment sold down south is Isle of Mull. It's all we see down south at the moment, which again, not knocking at great cheese, but it's more of a snowball effect, and I feel that the more that we can do, and I think maybe the reason I am so bullish at advertising it and trying to push it is that we do have incredible cheesemakers up here and some really nice cheeses, but it's just never shown. It's never really elevated down south. So again, I think it's just a snowball effect. I think we will, gradually pick up some, customers off the back of Scottish cheese, and people will start, enjoying it, opening it up, maybe some of our French alternatives. And I think that's all you can do. You can only just support the cheesemaker as much as you can, advertise their product, and do the best you can to get that cheese to the customer. I think it will. I mean, from what we're experiencing up here, I think it will take off to the south.
Well, it's nice to see you supporting Scotland and promoting Scotland so aggressively. It's
that's
good.
Yeah, the aggressive trait's a Scottish trait, isn't it?
Yes.
We're known for being aggressive.
Okay, well, I think we've kind of reached an end now, and I certainly would like to thank you for spending as much time as this and giving us so much information, fascinating information, and showing us the touring rooms. I wasn't sure what to expect. I mean, I have been in here once before, before you moved into this part of the building, and just seeing the 5 fridges, 6 fridges downstairs, and seeing how much you've got there, and understanding how much you love cheese is It's absolutely fascinating, and I'd like to thank you very much for that. I hope that that our viewers in the UK Terramadry event for Slow Cheese, I hope that you've enjoyed it as well. I think now we hand you back to Shane. Thanks.